I have been asked to give talks on these commentaries. I've been doing it for about almost 40 years. So often, of course, over that time, the same readings will come up again and again. Every time, there's always something in there that I never noticed before. This is the power of truth when it's written with the consciousness of truth, is that it keeps talking to us. When Swami Kriyananda published his, what is now the Art and Science of Raja Yoga, which I'm sure has been translated here, I had an original copy of that from like 1970 in a completely different form. I read it many times at the time. I put notes in the margin, I underlined, I put exclamation points, I put big question marks. And I had that same set for decades. Only recently did I change it in for a more modern one. And I would reread it periodically. And I would see my own handwriting making comments on paragraphs I'm certain were not in there when I read it before. Because we can only receive as much as we are capable of receiving. And that's why what is self-evident to many of you about life and the spiritual path may not be shared at all, even by people who are very close to you. And no matter how hard you try to persuade them or show them, nothing. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a series of comments about how we gradually learn on the spiritual path. I won't give you all the steps. I think I've made up things that aren't in there anymore. At first, nobody ever talks to you about it. The next time people talk to you about it, you fall asleep as soon as they begin talking. Then you stay awake, but you don't comprehend a word. Then you catch a word here and there, but immediately when you walk away, you forget. Because it's words, but words represent a certain vibration of consciousness. Words are symbols. That's why you can speak Italian, and I can't understand you, and I will speak English, and you won't understand me, but we'll both know that we're both talking about the same thing. It's just that we use different symbols to say it. When Swami Kriyananda would lecture in the temple where I live in Palo Alto, I would always sit in the front row, partly because I was hosting him, but also I'm better off if I don't see anything but Swamiji. Otherwise, I start thinking about, are you comfortable? Are you hearing? Is it okay? Do you like this? You better listen to this part, you know. All these things come into my head. So partly because I was right in front of him, I was very conscious of the fact that he sent a vibration first. He sent the vibration of the reality he was trying to express in symbols, and then he put words on them. And so we would hear the words and think that was the point of communication. But the actual point of communication was when the vibration came and whether we accepted it or not. And so we find ourselves, even if we are sincere disciples or devotees of God, wanting to be guided from a higher level, we move in and out of receptivity. You know, if you're having a very good meditation, there's a clear channel. If you're having a very agitated day, your agitation creates this kind of vibration, so when this wave of the spirit comes in, it can't get through. And so we tend to decide that God and Guru only talk to us sometimes. But it's not that they ever stop projecting the same vibration. It's that we step into it and then we step out of it. And that's why spiritual development is so subtle and in so many ways hard to measure. we think of it as this, I'm standing here and I walk from here to the end of the room. Certain people are in front of me, certain people are behind me, and it's just like it's a very measurable thing. It's more like the flight of a bumblebee, like that. And every so often you cross right across the center and everything is perfect, and then boom, you're off on another track, like that. But the important reality is not sort of every day measuring what I'm doing. Master says, if you put a plant into a pot and every day you pull it up to look at the roots to see if it's growing, then obviously that plant never has a chance. And when we think too much about what we're getting or not getting, or think too much about, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? I used to teach beginning meditation classes. And there was a format to the class. The first session, I would teach people the Hong Sau meditation, watching the breath, a few basics. Then they would practice for a week. This was all before internet, so you had to be there. So they come back the next week. How did it go? Of course, would be the first question. And it was so entertaining for me as people would describe what their obstacles were. As soon as I started to meditate, I got terribly sleepy, bang, falling over. As soon as I started to meditate, I started rehashing the argument I had with my husband this morning, right? As soon as I started to meditate, I got really hungry, right? I started thinking of that beautiful woman or that beautiful man that I saw on the street. Ooh, all this goes. And what people just described is everything else that constantly calls us away. Oh, and my favorite was, I'm not doing it right. I'm sitting to meditate, but I'm not doing it right. And I learned from my own experience, and from my experience of a meditator, and from the people in the class, that what interrupts your meditation is often how God is speaking to you. Because most of the time, all of those waves are happening all the time, and they're just ruling us, but we haven't stopped to notice, So what this is all about, and this is the chant that we were also singing earlier, I have made thee pole star of my life. Before I met Swami Kriyananda, I had an intuitive belief that there was some unifying truth to life, that life had a purpose, and that purpose was positive, and that my job was to live that positive purpose and to share it. But I didn't know what the purpose was. And I didn't want to just pull people down with my ignorance, just in the desire to be helpful, to tell them what my little brain thought was true. I did discover Sanatana Dharma, the teachings of India, a couple of years before I met Swami, but I still just didn't know what to do with it. I just couldn't figure out how to ground it in my life. And then I saw Swami Kriyananda. And I just recognized, well, from past lives, of course, I recognized who he had been to me and is to me to this day. But I also recognized the fulfillment of what I was longing for, which above all was joy, clarity, peace, and what I gradually began to understand was freedom. When I was much younger, I couldn't think of anything worthwhile to do in this world except to raise children. That seemed to me like a good idea because it was real work that had a real benefit. I assumed and aspired to have many children. As soon as I met Swami Kriyananda, I realized for me, and I have a great respect for parenting and raising children. But for me, I imagined that if I had children, I myself would get bigger. You understand? But I realized I would be the same size. I would just have a lot of children, to take care of me. They wouldn't solve the essential problem, which is that I felt so confined, just confined in my ideas, my preferences, my fears, all of that, because there was no point of reference that I could find. And Swami Kriyananda, I recognized he was the pole star. That chant's always been very dear to me. The pole star is the fixed point of reference. And you see, that's what discipleship is. That's what a guru provides for you. And this is why Swami talks about, if you're trying to learn anything, you want to go to someone who knows. And the sentence that struck me in the reading this time, that I'd really never noticed before, is you wouldn't risk your life climbing a mountain without getting somebody to help you know how to do it. But we risk our whole incarnation just wandering around guessing what we're supposed to be doing. Oh, maybe I should be rich. Let me be rich. Maybe I should have children. Oh, I think I'll have children. Maybe I'll go on an adventure across the world. But we don't have any fixed point of reference to tell us where everything fits. And once I met Swamiji, it was like an unshakable foundation was laid on my life. Now, trust me, I was on a long leash for a long time. Merely knowing where and what I was supposed to do. I did come and live in the community. From the outside, my life looks very committed, and it is. But oh my, in that commitment, the flight of the bumblebee in all directions, just trying to figure it out. But none of that actually made any difference because I knew what home was. You see the power of that? But you see, there has to be, and this is what he's talking about in the reading, there has to be a certain humility. You just have to come to the point where, as smart as you might be, and I was always a super smart kid, and I have a really good mouth on me, so I could always, show that I was the smartest kid in the room. But I knew I didn't know anything at all. And it was even worse to be able to make a good impression on people because I knew it was just hot air, that there was no understanding of truth behind it. So I never thought, I want a guru, I don't want a guru. I just wanted help. That's all. There's a Winnie the Pooh story, which is one of my favorites, in which Winnie the Pooh and Piglet get lost. They're not really lost. They're 5 feet from everyone else, but there's a lot of fog and they don't know it. And Winnie the Pooh is philosophizing, and Piglet simply collapses and then pulls himself enough together to say, "Help, help, help," and then he collapses again. The Piglet prayer has always been my favorite prayer, which is, I don't have to have a big story. I don't have to understand the philosophy. I don't have to know the Sanskrit names for the chakras. It's a joke with me. I've taught countless hours of classes on the chakras. I cannot remember the Sanskrit names. I have an excellent memory for anything that's important to me or that has meaning to me, but I cannot make those words mean anything. I was in India. I was giving a fairly large seminar on the chakras. One of my Indian friends said, "You can't teach the chakras in India without knowing the Sanskrit names." I said, "Watch me." But none of that matters. The only thing that matters, well, I'm going to use the word, how desperate are you? Because before we're really able and willing to be changed, we have to realize deep within our souls that I can't go on as I am. And that's when the Guru comes, and that's when you begin to hear the Guru, because he's always talking. They are always talking. God is always talking. I read a book, I don't know if it's in Italian or not, it's called Angels in My Hair, and it's written by an Irish woman. And basically her story is, from the time she was born, basically, she saw angels everywhere. And she lived so much in a different world that her family actually thought she was mentally deficient and treated her like her brain didn't work. But she was just over here. Quite apart from any of that, I believe her essential premise is true, which is we think we're alone and we're never alone. And it only makes sense that God would have a whole series of helpers. You know, the idea of a guardian angel who's always talking. And this woman talked about how everybody has a guardian angel. I wish I could see them all. They must be enjoying my talking about them. Everyone has a guardian angel who just follows you around all the time and watches you about to do something stupid and suggests to you that maybe you shouldn't. And sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. I recently, in a very complicated way, locked both my telephone and the keys to my car in the trunk of the car. And just as I was about to slam the trunk, I think my angel said, "Are you sure?" And then I slammed the trunk. But it enlightened me, even after all these years. Just stop for a minute and ask yourself the question, why am I doing this, and is this right? And how does it relate to my pole star? Am I moving away from it, or am I moving closer to it? Because what is the purpose of this life? It's so obvious. And nowadays, people talk about the purpose, but often, as it is with these more subtle teachings, the more popular it becomes, the more it just takes a little bit of turn off of the really helpful part. So now, the fact that we all have an individual purpose sometimes becomes another reason to feel tense and afraid. But we do all have a purpose. It's to be an instrument of light. It's to attune ourselves with love, with compassion, with kindness, not just sentimentally, but because that's what it is to be an instrument of God, to be committed to truth, to live it as best we can, to share. That's our purpose. And whether that purpose then expresses as all of the different talents that have been given to us, that's great. But truthfully, that's extra. It's not the expressing of your talents that puts you on purpose. It's loving God, being receptive to that. You know, sometimes the most humble and the least observed, you know, we don't know what our karma is. We just live our lives as best we can in attunement with the highest we can understand. And God is always on our side. That's so hard to understand, isn't it? Because in this world, we're always fighting against somebody who doesn't like us, who thinks different, and we're fighting within ourselves. I'm not doing it right. I should be doing it better. What is my purpose? How can I find it? I'm all in favor of finding your purpose and feeling fulfilled. But it's not as hard as you think. The first is to just start listening. The song, this last song that they sang, what is the word? I mean, in English repeats, listen, 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 deep within your soul. And do that first, foremost. Everything else follows. Because this life goes by faster than you think. I wish when I was 20, I knew how short 50 years is. Now I say, well, I've been on the path for 50 years, and there's a certain kind of wow about that. But 50 years, you think it happens in one big clump, that you're just standing there and then all of a sudden 50 years falls on you. It's not like that at all. You have one day, and then you have another day after that. Then you have another day after that. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? Whole lifetime has gone by. What will you carry to your life review? What will you carry out of this life? Personally, I stack up things for my life review that I'm going to be happy to present. And I do that because I used to be very, very worried all the time. I was always worried that I wasn't measuring up. So it started by accident that I decided if I carry nothing else, I can carry this. I was very nice to this person and it helped them. So at least I have one point when I get to the other side. But once I started thinking like that, I began to realize all that matters is that we just love God and do our best. And if your best is kind of mediocre, that's all right. Nobody cares. And when I'm in here, I keep pointing to the big pictures on the wall. They love us unconditionally. And they are always on our side. And they are never judging us. You really need to think what that really means. And then every time fear and anxiety and self-doubt and laziness, whatever, who cares? We are perfectly loved. How would we live if we were certain of that? Swami has a song called I Live Without Fear. I was contemplating one day, what would it be like to really live without fear? I'm a bit high-strung, so that's part of my nature. I was walking upstairs to my bedroom with the thought, what would it be like to live without fear? And I believe it was 3 steps going up without stopping. I was fearless. Oh, wow, that is something I really want to have. That's our purpose, and that's what the Guru will give us. And how much we receive of it? The Bible says, to all who received him. Jesus gives us the power to become Christ ourselves. So the choice is entirely ours. Isn't that wonderful? And we have to do nothing to earn it. We just have to say, help, help, help. And then open ourselves when that comes. God bless you.